What's going on, everybody? Welcome back. We are live for a brand new episode of Liam's First Look. And this week on the show, we're talking about UFC 307. It is going down at the Vivint Arena in Salt Lake City, Utah. It's headlined by a light heavyweight title fight, but we do have a pair of title fights at the top of the bill, starting with the more important of the two, the one that is a little bit more anticipated. Alex Poatan Pereira in the main event of the evening is taking on Khalil Rountree Jr. And you may be saying to yourself, how did Khalil Rountree Jr. slide into this opportunity? He's maybe not the next in line for the spot, but this is a business, right? And at the end of the day, the UFC has a lot of business interests. And one of those business interests is keeping one of their big stars, Alex Poatan Pereira, busy and trying to keep him away from Magomed Ankalaev for as long as they can, because they'd like to continue this title reign and they'd like to see, if he can go out there and have these highlight reel knockouts. On the other side, you've got a Khalil Rountree Jr. who has the style of fighting that they like to see. Going out there, he's aggressive with the striking. He's got a highlight reel full of knockouts. And he's also been put on the highlight reel a few times. You've seen a couple guys go out there and put him in difficult situations, right? In the early going, we saw an Iwan Kutalaba just eke his way back into the win streak, into the win column on Saturday night. And yet, this is a guy who was able to get over on Khalil Rountree a few years ago. But what have we seen? It's the development throughout his career. He did go out there and change his style. So you see a guy in Khalil Rountree, he's rounding into perhaps the best form of his career, but he has been fast-tracked to this title shot. On the other side, Alex Poatan Pereira, people have always had some questions about his skills, right? You look at his past betting lines, that'll tell you everything. He's been closely lined with most of his UFC opponents. And yet in this fight, he's going as a minus 400, minus 500 type favorite. So there's a lot of interesting stuff to break down, and I'm excited to do that. But we've got a lot of great fights. We've also got the co-main event. It's going to be Julianna Pena and Raquel Pennington. Is it the most exciting fight you've ever seen on paper? Maybe not. But is it fun to have Julianna Pena out there talking a little smack, maybe riling up the fans a little bit during fight week? I think that you could do worse in the women's divisions. And on top of that, she's been on some highlight reel finishes. She went out there and killed the GOAT, Amanda Nunes, but she's also went out there and taking an absolute shellacking in that rematch. So interesting to see how Julianna Pena is able to bounce back from that. But with that being said, guys, wanted to just introduce the show. If you're new here, what's going on? My name's Liam. I pick fights on this channel each and every week. If you guys are not already, I encourage you to get subscribed to the channel, because later tonight we're going live with myself, with Gordo Gambles, and with Pierce. Lord willing, the trio will be back together once again, and that's going down tonight around 11:05 p.m. Eastern. So stay tuned. We got more content even today on the channel. You're going to make sure you don't want to miss that. Hit subscribe, hit that notification bell if you never want to miss a live breakdown. But I wanted to make sure we got to UFC 307 on the first look early this week, right? Because the goal of the first look is not to come to you with all my finished research. It's to give you my first impressions. It's to look at these lines, see if anything stands out to us as being interesting, and try and find valuable betting opportunities. And it's a good part of my process over time. What I've been struggling with recently is picking the right bets to go with, in terms of I've been identifying a lot of winning bets, a lot of good angles, a lot of the right analysis, but just honing in on where I should be deploying the units. I've been doing good on the year because of disciplined unit management, but still, I feel like I've had a better set of reads and analysis lately than my betting results. So for me, I'm trying to get my results in alignment with my goals this week. And I think that we have a good opportunity to do so. So if you guys are new here, all my bets are tracked third party at betmma.tips, the good, the bad, and the ugly. I've been tracking on here since I was a losing sports bettor, guys. And you can go back and track the journey if you ever want to yourself, and you can see some of the best bets I've made. You can see some of the worst bets I've made, some of the ones where I've gotten lucky, some of the ones, where things have gone my way, and some of the times where they haven't, right? But what we're always going to be about on this show is transparency. So before we get into the new breakdowns, before we get into the new set of fights, we're always going to revisit, be fully transparent. So I've been tracking third party. This is going on my 5th year, guys. I started in July of 2020. I started out rough. I was on a really bad run. And there was one point in my Bet MMA journey where I was down about 40 some odd units. And when you're at that position, you have to ask yourself, am I any good at this? Should I even continue to do this? And I read a lot of books. I learned from a lot of really sharp guys in this space. and I put together several really good years in a row. But for me, my goal is to get back to that 12% ROI. It's to get back, to where I can be. I know that I can do better, right? I have the proven results. So for me, that's what I'm, just leveling with you guys. That's what I'm struggling with this year. I've been doing okay, but not reaching my goals. So for me, this is the week where I really believe that I have a chance to get back to where we were looking to be, right? And why do I say that? Because where I start my process when I look at a new fight card each week is how I've done betting the fighters before. And when you look at some of these fight cards, I'll just be honest, right? I look and I see, wow, I've done terribly on these fighters before. It's going to be a slog this week. I'm going to have to really be disciplined. I'm going to have to really pick my spots. But if you guys would indulge me for 1 second here, what we'll do is we'll look at my previous results on the fighters that are from UFC 307. So this is a great feature on BetMMA.tips. I have no affiliation with them other than I've been tracking my bets there for a long time. But I'll just tell you guys, for me, it's very helpful to have these kind of things where I can go back and refer to my previous bets. Also, a lot of these bets have write-ups, why I thought it was a good bet at the time that I placed it, for example. And so then you could see over time, is my read sharp? Is it not sharp? Did I have a good read overall? And looking at these fighters, guys, I will say it is definitely swayed by some very positive results on Kevin Holland, Ketlen Vieira, and Jose Aldo. However, I am plus 44.9 units on these fighters lifetime to date, tracked moneyline betting at a 51% ROI. If you guys can't see that, it's right down here at the bottom. So we've done quite well with these fighters. Some of the highlights include Bogdan Guskov, plus 175, a recent hitter, 10 units on Carla Esparza in that complete sham of a fight against Rose Namajunas, the non-violence championship. Happy to cash it, though. Plus 199 on Thiago Moises against Alexander Hernandez. Fraud checked him there, all on the stand-up, guys. He literally just beat him up with the jab, beat him up with his stand-up. Amanda Lemos and Verna Jandiroba against Marina Rodriguez. Cashed those ones. Cashed our guy Joaquin Buckley, plus 195 against Albert Duraev. Cashed big on Derek Brunson against Kevin Holland. Kevin Holland is one of my best handicap fighters of all time. And looking at the community results, the same thing holds true for the BetMMA community. They're positive betting on Kevin Holland. They're positive betting against Kevin Holland. The community loves this guy because he has been predictable from a betting standpoint, so to speak. Ketlen Vieira against Holly Holm, controversial decision to be sure, but I was happy to cash that one, as well as the Misha Tate beat down from Ketlen Vieira. But she's got her hands full this weekend, right? So not all sunshine and rainbows. Definitely a lot of losses on here as well. Julianna Pena against Amanda Nunes in the rematch. What a square bet that was. Got absolutely shellacked for the duration. So own the wins. Celebrate the wins, own the losses as well. I've done quite well on these fighters in the past, but the bookie's not going to pay you for what you did last week. So let's get into the fight that we have coming up. Let's get into this fight card, and we're going to start like we always do on the first look with the main event of the evening. So I mentioned off the top, you've got the defending champion. He is 37 years of age. Okay, so that is pretty old for a defending champion. However, you wouldn't have known it based on his recent performances. He goes out there and absolutely starches Yuri Prohaska. He made it look easy. That was a rematch of a fight that he had already won via knockout. He went back and did it the same way, potentially with even less issue. So Alex Pereira has left no doubt. He is the better fighter compared to Yuri Prohaska. He was the superior fighter. Against Jamal Hill, he was able to stop him. Were the circumstances a little bit weird? A little bit weird, but still, I think you counted clean victory for Alex Poatan Pereira. He got fouled. He said no mas to the referee. Don't get involved here. And then he just handled business, dropped him, landed a lot of big shots. That was impressive stuff. Then you look back at the Jan Blachowicz fight. Super close fight. Probably could have went either direction if we're being fair. But Jan Blachowicz got so tired in rounds 2 and 3 that a lot of his offense was muted. So you saw an Alex Pereira do a great job. No way. I hope that's the real GM3, the man of the hour. How are you? To Mr. Mearshart, the GOAT, a celebrated jiu-jitsu practitioner out there knocking these fools out with the hands and then claiming wins for jiu-jitsu with the chokes. Absolutely love to see it. Shout out to GM3. Huge fan of him on this show. Shout out to our guy Cody as well in the chat. Shout out to Cod Live, says he's finally catching us live. Appreciate you. John Murphy says, Liam, the man, the myth, the legend, you are far too kind, my brother. I appreciate you being here. Shout out to everybody who's rocking with us live in the chat. And Lord will, that's the real GM3. What a cool experience. But in any case, guys, if we go back, Alex Pereira at 185 pounds, right back in GM3's weight class at middleweight, he had a tough go at it against Israel Adesanya the second time out in the UFC. They fought many times. There's a lot of familiarity there. But we saw both times that he fought Izzy, he got rocked, he got jarred. It looked like he was in danger of being finished. And then he was able to, find a way through it, right? In the first fight, right? He gets hurt at the end of round one. He gets to sit down on his stool, takes some deep breaths, recomposes himself, goes back to work on the calf, and eventually he gets the finish in round 5 standing against Israel Adesanya. Sensational win. Shout out to GM3 in the chat. It is not the real GM3. I got excited because the real GM3 follows me on Twitter, and I do stream this on Twitter as well as on YouTube. So I got fired up there that GM3 had caught the tweet and was tuning in today, but not to be, unfortunately. Shout out regardless to the GOAT GM3. But what we will go back to is you look at an Alex Pereira and what he brings to the table. His ability to go out there and hurt the calf is impressive, right? He's got excellent low kicks. It's been well discussed. It's been, talked about ad nauseum, but it's meaningful to talk about. He's very good at attacking the calf, at attacking the leg, at making guys second guess their stance. Then he goes out there and he punishes people when they start looking at the wrong area of the body. Against Sean Strickland, you saw him simply dip through with, the jab to the body, kept getting Strickland to say, man, this jab to the body is really stinging. He's starting to get me here. So he starts to drop his hands down, and what happens? Left hook upstairs. Thanks for playing, Sean Strickland. That's kind of how good his striking is in terms of the lethality, in terms of his ability to take people out in the fight. He lands the head kick against Ihor. He's able to take him out of the fight. He lands the left hook against Jamal Hill. He's able to take him out of the fight. You've just seen a lot of examples of Pereira having a very dangerous skill set and the ability to close the show. But I did note on X last night, the last time Alex Pereira was a minus 400 favorite or higher was against Thomas Powell in the LFA. It's been quite some time since we've seen these kind of odds for Alex Pereira. And if you don't believe me, let's just go ahead and check according to our friends over at betmma.tips. So looking at the odds archive here, against Thomas Powell in the LFA, he won via knockout in the first round. He was a minus 588 favorite. But then against Andreas Michailidis, he was minus 240. Against Bruno Silva, minus 190, went to decision there. Against Sean Strickland, he was a plus money underdog. They have the wrong labeling here. They have him labeled plus 460 against Adesanya. I did go back and check. Most sports books had him plus 185. I think one sports book got hit with a massive bet on Adesanya late and moved their number. I think that is where the false attribution comes from in terms of what we're looking at. But if you look at the next fight, he then closes plus 115 against Adesanya in the rematch. He does lose that fight via knockout, closes a small underdog against Jan Blachowicz in his light heavyweight debut. He wins that fight via split decision. Then he knocks out Yuri at a pick'em price. He beats Jamal Hill at about a minus 125 to a minus 150. And then he goes out there and he beats Yuri Prohaska. Again, he was about a pick'em most of fight week. And then you saw him close around that minus 140, minus 135 price range. So Alex Pereira isn't really a minus 400 fighter typically, right? When you look back, it's typically not a very, favored fighter, right? He's a guy that's gone in there and been 50-50 with most of his opponents per the odds. And I think that part of it speaks to the fact that Khalil Rountree has been, let's say, underrated by the betting public throughout his career. And we can show documentary evidence of that. But additionally, you're looking at a guy in Pereira who doesn't really implement a ground game, who doesn't really implement takedowns. So there's not a lot of skills that he has to limit variance. He's a very good striker. He's an elite striker at the UFC level, and he should absolutely be favored here. I don't think there's any doubt about that. But then you do just have to question yourself, where is his ceiling as a favorite in a all striking fight? Primarily, right? Because you don't expect him to take it to the ground in all likelihood. So in an all striking fight, what is his upside in terms of a favorite status? What price could he cover? I mean, if he knocks him out in the first round, he'll probably look like a minus 300 favorite. The cardio is a question for me. Not to say that Alex doesn't have good cardio. I think he has good cardio. We've seen that he's able to pull it together in round 5 against Israel Adesanya. But he's 37 years of age. He's going to be fighting in Utah at extreme elevation. So I think that that's the kind of area where we've seen weird finishes happen before. I mean, just think of Usman and Leon Edwards, right? As a prime example, another fight that took place in Salt Lake City, a big upset in that case. And I think that when you look at this fight, you can make a case for both guys. The case for Khalil Rountree is you're probably getting him at the peak of his powers. He's 34 years of age. You're getting a Khalil Rountree who seems to be a little bit more confident in his recent performances. And he's also been very prolific as an underdog. If you guys will venture with me for 1 second to the Khalil Rountree page, what you'll see is his first time being an underdog in the UFC, he lost as a plus 156 underdog against Andrew Sanchez in the Ultimate Fighter finale back in July of 2016. Since that time, guys, what we've seen from Khalil Rountree Jr., his first time as an underdog was against glory kickboxer Gokhan Saki, and he knocked him dead in the first round, plus 130. Now you're looking at a run that he goes on, right? He goes out against Eric Anders as a plus 170 underdog after coming back from Thailand, and he gave him the old Thailand Khalil and absolutely beat the smoke out of him. So I'm not trying to compare any of these fighters to Pereira. I'm just talking about the perception of Khalil Rountree throughout his career. Essentially, this guy has just been proving people wrong as an underdog throughout, right? You go look at the Modestas Bukauskas fight, plus 131 on the money line, goes out there and kicks his knee out of his leg, right? Like just a disgusting oblique kick, foot stomp, whatever you want to call it, just knocks through the knee joint. It was just disgusting, right? He stepped on that patella. Ooh. And Bukauskas was not the same fighter seemingly for a while after that. Then you look at the Carl Roberson fight. He beat him like he stole something. He was a plus 137 underdog in that fight and absolutely smashed him. Then you look at the Dustin Jacoby fight. And Dustin Jacoby's another glory kickboxer. This was a really controversial win, right? It was a very close, competitive fight. But then what do you see, right? A split decision, plus 162 he was on the money line. What does that make for? You go down 5-1 as an underdog for Khalil Rountree at an average odds of plus 147, by the way, not plus 300, not plus 400, something like that, and 105% ROI. So I'm not telling you that you should go out there and bet on Khalil Rountree, but would I hesitate to lay a minus 500 price tag in a primary striking fight? I certainly would. I've been wrong about Pereira in the past. I've definitely underrated him and undersold his ability. Not to say that I didn't think he was a great, talented striker. I did. But I thought that somebody like Yuri could take him to the ground and potentially compromise him that way. And Yuri was unable to do that. I don't know that Yuri was really committed to doing that in the end. Even with a rematch, I don't think he did very much differently. And when I think about how this fight could play out and what some of the intangibles could be, some of the things I'm going to be looking for on tape. Number one, how does Khalil Rountree deal with the low kicks? Thailand Khalil might actually have some answers in terms of checks, in terms of trying to not let the low kicks add up and not let them be free. He might try and punish Alex with some hard checks or with some counter kicks, cutting kicks to the inside, trying to cut out the opposite leg while Alex is on one foot, things like that. Alex is very quick, though. He's very hard to get a beat on. When you look at how he throws the low kicks, people that have talked about fighting him after the fact, they say it's very hard to get a beat on the guy when he's throwing the low kick. He disguises it very well, and he brings it to the leg very quickly. But it's the kind of fight where I see Alex going out there and trying to implement his hands and put hands on Khalil. We have seen Khalil get hurt before. If we go back and refer to the records, right, we'll go to Tapology and we'll go ahead and go fight by fight through the record of Khalil Rountree as we did with Alex Poatan Pereira, and we'll see what that could tell us. So on the Khalil Rountree side of things, he beats Anthony Smith, and I'll be frank, that told me very little about how this fight will go. It was a good win. He looked solid. Excuse me, if unremarkable at times. One more. Nope, we're good. Perfect. And so I'm thinking to myself, okay, he gets the Dawkins win. That also does not tell me very much. Dawkins, good fighter, but a guy that was kind of a tweener in terms of weight class. He didn't know if he should be a heavyweight or a light heavyweight. His hand speed and his footwork is something that benefited him in the heavyweight division. But against a guy like Khalil Rountree, those things are out the window. Khalil's better at both. So he didn't really have many on-paper advantages unless he was going to look to grapple, and he didn't really try to do that. And when he did, he got horsed around physically by Khalil Rountree. Then you look at the Dustin Jacoby fight. We talked about it. Very controversial fight. He did win it as an underdog, though. Then he goes on another, string of underdog wins. Karl Roberson, Modestas Bukauskas, finishes them both in the second round. The Marcin Prachnio fight was back in 2021. It did not age very well. You look at that fight. Khalil was a minus 400 favorite. Excuse me. It was a close decision, but Prachnio has a way of going out there and doing a decent job of making fights close if they go to the cards, but he is a guy that tends to slow down in the third round. So I'll rewatch that and see if I can get a beat on the cardio of Khalil Rountree Jr. Because I do think the cardio is a huge dynamic when you're talking about a fight taking place at altitude. And I also want to just go back and check. I believe that Khalil trains in Vegas. Is that correct? So let's see where Khalil is training right now. I'm just taking a glance at his Instagram. Bethel page. Huh. I really can't get a great beat on it. Yeah, it looks like it's in Vegas. So Khalil is training in Vegas, and I do wonder if that's a benefit for, cardio. I would have thought it probably would have behooved these guys to train at altitude for this fight, but maybe they're both expecting that it's going to be, an early finish type of deal. This is some people said that the Prachnio loss, Danny P says, if you lose a unanimous decision to Prachnio, you should be banned from title fights. How about if you get knocked out in the first round by Iwan Kutalaba? I mean, that's not a great loss. The Johnny Walker first round stoppage loss as well, not great. Shout out to Kelly in the chat, says Alex has experience fighting in Utah. That's a great point. That is a great point. And who did he fight in Utah? If you refresh my memory. So let's go ahead and look at Alex Pereira's ledger. Was one of the Yuri fights in Salt Lake City? Because I know UFC 300 was not. UFC 303, that was in Vegas. So when did he fight at altitude? He fought at UFC 276, eh? No, that was in Vegas as well. Are you sure? I believe you, but I'm not finding it. Was it Blachowicz? Oh, yeah, it must have been Blachowicz. Yeah, it was Blachowicz. Okay, fair play to you. And what that tells us is he did gas out in that fight. He did gas out in that fight, but I think they both did, and it was a lot more of a fight where both guys were engaged in the heavy grappling early. I think that Jeff makes a good point. Matchmakers probably trying to squeeze as many wins out of Pereira as they can before he has to face Ankalaev. I do feel the same way. Jan guy had his wrestling cardio tested at altitude. Good point. He hasn't fought any top guys. About Khalil, that is largely true. Khalil's resume is underwhelming. Absolutely. He's good at making fights closer than they should be, says Nate. I agree with that. He did not go 5 rounds. That was a 3-round fight with Jan Blachowicz. Okay, so now we've got our background information. Listen, I think let's talk about the anthropomorphics, right? Let's get those on the screen. So first and foremost, we've got a 3.5-inch reach advantage for the champion, Alex Poatan Pereira. He is going to be 3 inches taller as well, so he's the much bigger man in this matchup. However, the younger man by 3 years is going to be Khalil Rountree Jr., so he's under 35 years of age. I think that would be a favorable dynamic typically for a title fight. And he didn't gas. I don't know. I kind of thought he did gas in that fight. I will go back and rewatch it and give him the benefit of the doubt. My memory could be misremembering. I know Jan Blachowicz definitely gassed out and kind of made it, a much more winnable fight. He took his back pretty easily in the first round, but he just did not have the juice to keep going. And I want to say Jan Blachowicz was 40 years of age when they fought. He's certainly up there in age at this point in his career. Maybe he was just 39, but he's definitely up there in age in his own right. And Khalil is a freak athlete. If we go over and just peek at the Instagram of Khalil Rountree Jr., the guy is a muscle freak, right? If we look right here, this is his current training ahead of UFC 307. The guy looks to be in tremendous shape. He looks to be working very hard, but he's in for an uphill battle, right? I think that you have an interesting fight on our hands. I think Khalil is going to present Alex some striking threats, right? It's at the end of the day, it's two 205-pound men throwing punches and kicks at each other's head, neck, and chest, right? The guy who should be favored is the one who's more skilled, who is Alex Pereira. And I think that that's a great, a great opportunity for him to go out there and get another win as a champion. But I'm always hesitant in striking-based fights when you've got 4-ounce gloves on, when both guys have a lot of power and the ability to close the show via knockout. If you look at Khalil Rountree's record as a professional, he's got 13 wins in pro MMA. 9 of them are via knockout. So he's a very dangerous guy. He's a very powerful guy. He can, in my opinion, land a knockout blow. He's got 7 wins via knockout in the UFC. But the problem for me is he's got 2 losses via knockout and against lower level competition than Alex Poatan Pereira. This might be Pereira's last win in a title fight. I think he's going to have a tougher title fight after this. I do think both of them are going to strike. Yeah, Khalil maybe could take him down, but I don't think Khalil wants to take him down. I do think Khalil is going to try and strike with him, and I think Khalil might have some success. But if he gets hit with that left hook, I do envision him going down. And Alex Pereira, if he gets his 9th win in the UFC, it could be his last. He's 37 years of age. They're putting him in a striking-based fight here. And Ankalaev is 1 win away from getting a title shot. They've got a lot of, contenders starting to wait in the wings, work their way up in this light heavyweight division. So perhaps Pereira's days are numbered, but right now the guy is one of the biggest stars in the company. And I do think that they try and set up their guys for success, but this is a win-win for the UFC, guys. Understand, Khalil Rountree's got a great story. He's got a great story of redemption. He overcame all these things about bullying, and he lost all this weight, and he's an articulate guy. He's a positive spokesman. He'll go out there and say very, thoughtful things about the fight game, about his place in the sport. And whether you like or don't like that about Khalil, it is something that can transcend the sport. It's something that can reach out to an audience maybe beyond the typical MMA fan. And he's been on Joe Rogan. He's been in these big platforms. They've kind of given Khalil Rountree Jr. this little leg up, and they've given him a lot of fights in Vegas in front of his local crowd, in front of a lot of people that support him. So I think both these guys have a chance to win. That's why you're probably not catching me laying a minus 585% implied ever, especially when you're talking about UFC title fights. I typically find they're too competitive for that level of confidence. And I said this before the Israel Adesanya and Sean Strickland fight. And then I found a way to bet the fight not to go the distance. I got cute and I didn't make the money. And my write-up at the beginning of the week said, there's definitely value on Strickland as a dog. This is a UFC title fight. Maybe he's not the typical guy who makes it here, but he's going to go out there and fight, and he knows how to fight, and he's got skills, and he can contend on the feet, which is where Izzy wants to be. And Izzy's not going to take him down, So when you talk about why could somebody like Khabib be a huge favorite? Because you have confidence in his chin, and you think he's going to go out there and take the guy down a million times. And if not, he's going to out jab him like he did against Ally Quinton. He's just going to find a way to win no matter what. That's a different thing than somebody who basically needs to win a striking-based fight, which I think he should be favored to do so. But it's two grown-ass men, and one of them's a little bit younger. They're both very athletic and fast. So I just think they both have a chance to win it by knockout. And when you're talking about a puncher's chance at plus 400, how crazy are you, right? Like when a guy is as talented as Khalil Rountree Jr. So I think I favor Pereira. I'm picking him to win at this stage of the week, but I do have those questions I'm bringing with me to tape. How is the cardio going to fare at 37 years of age, even though he's got the experience in Utah? How is he going to do with the frequency of activity? You've got Khalil, who's had a little bit more rest and preparation. You've got Alex Pereira, who's doing nothing but making these quick turnarounds for the company, being a company guy. And sometimes being a company guy pays off. Other times it costs you. Other times it can be a real detriment. So for me, I'm interested to see how this one plays out. I'm picking the champion to retain. He hasn't been this big a favorite in quite some time. So maybe he goes out there and replicates that success against Powell and gets the knockout. But it seems to me like a fantastic fight on paper, and I'm excited to see it shake out. I think somebody should get violently finished here more often than not. They've got the styles for it. Alex never takes a day off training, usually twice a day. I understand that, but 37-year-olds at elevation don't tend to have great results. It's not to say that he can't do it. I'm wishing him the best, right? And most of his fights end in the first 2 rounds anyway. But I am just calling it the way I see it, right? Glover Teixeira works really hard. He's his mentor. He had great cardio, and then Yuri Prohaska submitted him in the 5th round. Is it because he didn't train hard? Is it because he took days off? No, it's because he had a younger man that was able to just push a little bit further on those cardio reserves. So that's all I'm talking about. Nothing but respect for the champion. All right, next up, folks, we got Raquel Rocky Pennington taking on Julianna Pena. And this fight, I will not take as much time to discuss, frankly. We've got Raquel Pennington, and we will go first and examine her recent run of performances. She did beat Mayra Shitara Bueno Silva, but I can't say that I had my hair blown back by that performance. It was a very ho-hum decision. At certain points, it looked like she could have finished. She didn't really put her foot on the gas. She's got a very journeywoman-like record, with all due respect. Split decision win over Ketlen Vieira. I'm not sure she deserved that win. It was very close. God bless her for it. She also had a win via split against Irene Aldana that I thought she lost back in the day. So as far as I'm concerned, Raquel Pennington should have a lot of losses on her record that she doesn't have. Macy Chiasson was giving her the business in the first round. And then in round 2, she was able to make that comeback and get a choke. But she's just had a very weird, sketchy career, I feel. Liam, I have a cold, and thus the stream and a little green got me feeling much better. Thanks to you, and cheers to the constant grind, brother. Appreciate you, my man. Thank you so much for the dono, Jake, and it's always my pleasure, brother. Here to bring the action, and we've got plenty of great fights to discuss. So we got to dig through this title fight to get to the gold that's below it. Shout out to everybody who's rocking with us in the chat. Liam's not doing a 15-minute breakdown on Pena and Rocky. He's for the people. Absolutely. Hey, Liam, appreciate the insight. My pleasure, my man. So looking back, the Aspen Ladd win has aged like milk. Penny Kianzad, I guess that's a fine win. Marion Renault, pretty up there in terms of her age. Losing the Holly Holm fight. I think she had that opportunity twice. She lost both times. Split decision, unanimous decision. The Jermaine Durandamy fight, missed weight, and also lost the unanimous decision there. So these are all back in 2018, but she's made some improvements since then. She's built the camps around her, and the division has just been stagnant and very bad. So she got the opportunity against Mayra Bueno Silva. She won the fight, and I just think the UFC does not want to see this title around her waist for much longer. I'll put it that way, right? I don't think they could headline a card with her. I don't think they could sell I think it'd be hard to sell her as a main event attraction, as somebody that you really got to part with your hard-earned dollars for. And that's no disrespect to her, but think about it. You're putting on the marquee 16-8 as the professional record. I mean, it's very ho-hum. It's a very MMA record, right? Certainly not a boxing record that's been very groomed and pedicured and manicured to be made to look good. If we look at what we're seeing on the screen here, guys, we've got a 1.5-inch reach advantage for the challenger, Julianna Pena, but she is giving up an inch in height here, and she is 1 year younger. So I would say slight anthropomorphic advantages to Pena, but pretty negligible overall. I think that when you look at these two women on paper, I think the aggression, the finishing upside is a little bit more pertinent for Julianna Pena. I do think that she's shown that throughout her career. She also makes mistakes. She's a wild fighter. She's very hittable at times, but she brings the pace, she brings the pressure, she brings the aggression, and she forces people to make mistakes a lot of the time. What I will note is that her cardio was a flaw against Germaine Durand to me. I thought that she overworked early. I thought she was having a hard time getting her success that she was looking for, and she ended up getting choked unconscious with a guillotine choke in that fight. She was an underdog in that contest. So let's go back and look at how she's done as an underdog overall in the UFC, because she's definitely going to be positive, having the most profitable win essentially of all time against Julianna Pena, or excuse me, against Amanda Nunes. So I'm looking at it right now. She's 3-3 as a UFC underdog for 116% ROI. Very good stuff there. Lost to Amanda Nunes last time out. She's been out of the cage for quite some time. The level of activity has not been there. I do think she deserved at least a year off after getting, pretty brutally, touched up by Amanda Nunes there. She didn't get stopped, but she got everything but stopped. Got beat up badly. Then you look, she was plus 750 when she got the win via sub 2. Not even a fully locked in rear naked choke. Shout out to Amanda Nunes. She tapped way too quick to that, but she's still the GOAT. Then you look at the Sarah McMahon fight. She was able to tap Sarah McMahon. Competitive fight, right? Competitive minutes at times, but Sarah McMahon just had a hard time with other physical grapplers, with other women that could assert themselves in the clinch. And I think that we saw that borne out. And then the Germaine Durand fight. So what really stands out about Julianna Pena is the lack of activity, guys. My dog just stumbled into the room here and opened the door to the studio. So I got that closed now. So hopefully any background noise will be cut off. But looking at the matchups that we have to judge, Julianna Pena is still a good grappler, but her striking is horrendous, right? It's pretty based on power and intensity and willingness to get hit and throw back more than it is technique and being really slick. She works hard seemingly at sick jitsu and, has a good work ethic, but not very active at all. And she has been finished 3 times as a professional MMA fighter. So definitely some signs of worry. She's been submitted twice in the UFC, and Raquel Pennington on the other side of things, she has been finished just 1 time in the UFC via strikes. Otherwise, it's been 10-4 career to the decision. And if you look, she got submitted 1 time earlier in her career as well. The ground and pound against Amanda Nunes, she didn't want to go out for round 5. Went out there, got finished anyway, brutal look, and she got submitted by Katzengano all the way back in 2012. But this girl's been fighting for an eternity, and she's been way more active recently compared to Julianna Pena. If you look, she lost to Holly Holm back in 2020, but since then, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 fight win streak heading into this fight. And do I think of her as a long-term champion? No, I do not. She's 13-5 coming into this one in the UFC. I think whether it's this fight or the next fight, Rocky Pennington is probably going to lose. I just don't see her as a long-term UFC champion by any means, but she worked hard to get here. She's been fighting the more relevant recent fights, and I trust her cardio a little bit more. So I get why she's favored. The ABCs do say always bet on cardio, but I feel like Pena does have some finishing upside in this fight. I feel like we've seen Raquel Pennington kind of get bullied against the fence a couple times and beat up a little bit, and then she's able to rally and recover like we saw in the Macy Chiasson fight. Similarly, there's been a couple times where she's been horsed around a little bit. And I feel that you look at Julianna Pena's resume, the Valentina Shevchenko fight is one that stands out, right? She was very closely lined with Shevchenko back in the day, and Shevchenko submitted her in the second round. So if you just look at the highlight there, you're going to say to yourself, you know what, it's like levels fight. But Julianna Pena was taking her down, putting her in some uncomfortable positions, really getting after her. And then she got submitted, right? She makes some bad decisions, kind of like her teammate, Michael Chiesa. But in the women's side of the game, aggression, physicality will take you a long way. And Julianna Pena has those. And there's a blessing and a curse to not being active. The curse is activity is what keeps you fresh. It keeps you in the game. It keeps your speed up. It keeps your timing in check, all those things. But on the other side, it's harder for people to game plan exactly where you're at. They don't know what you've been working on. They don't know what skills you've acquired. So if you come in with a completely different game plan, if you come in with a whole new set of skills, it's going to be very difficult for them to prepare for that. So shout out to Raquel Pennington. I think she's probably going to be training at elevation here. If we go back and look, let's go ahead and take a peek at the Instagram for each of these two women and see where they're training. Looks like Colorado Springs, Colorado at Altitude MMA for Raquel Pennington. That does seem like a great signal for her. Additionally, guys, the one other thing I will note is her wife, Tecia Pennington, the artist formerly known as Tecia Torres, will be competing on the very same card against Carla Esparza in her retirement bout. So that is something to watch this space from a narrative standpoint. I think I've said plenty about this fight. I think they've got the right woman favored. I'm not sure that I would agree with the degree to which she is favored. I'm curious what the finish-only markets look like. I'm definitely going to look into the props a little bit deeper over the course of this fight week. I will just leave you guys with the prices on this fight. So according to BetOnline, we're sitting at a minus 160, Raquel Rocky Pennington, plus 140, the comeback on Julianna Pena in the co-main event of the evening, guys. Next up, folks, let's talk about one of my favorite fighters of all time, Jose Aldo Jr. He's an underdog here, taking on Mario Bautista. And this is a fight that I think a lot of people are going to be talking about throughout the course of the week because it's so sensational to see the legend Jose Aldo still doing the damn thing. He went out there in his most recent fight, got the decision win over Jonathan Martinez. And if you guys remember, he landed huge shots, right? He landed good, potent strikes. And when you look at Jose Aldo, he nearly put him away in the third round. So Jose Aldo still showing he's got it at 38 years of age. He looks, as tense as ever in those boxing exchanges, right? Where he's like very tight, very taut in the shoulders, but his reaction time still holding up. His ability to land devastating counters still holding up. And what we've seen is a really impressive few performances from Jose Aldo. You look at the Merab Dvalishvili fight, and I know he lost, but we've got to just acknowledge the fact that Merab Dvalishvili has taken down every UFC opponent except for Jose Aldo Jr. Let me go back and fact check myself because I don't want to speak out of turn, but I believe that Merab Dvalishvili has taken down each and every UFC opponent. So we're sharing this tab instead. Merab, 6 takedowns against O'Malley, 5 against Olympic gold medalist Henry Cejudo, 11 against Petr Yan, 0 against Jose Aldo Jr., Goose Egg, 4 against Moraes, 5 against Stamen, 2 against Dodson, 13 against Lopez, 12 against Casey Kenny, 5 against Brad Katona, 5 against Terrion Ware, 6 against Ricky Simone, 11 against Frankie Saenz. Did you hear me? Jose Aldo don't get taken down, ladies and gentlemen. The bantamweight champion of the world, 16 attempts, 0 secured. That's how good this guy is. When I say that no fighter I've ever seen has better takedown defense for a non-wrestler than Jose Aldo Jr., I mean it. This guy is so damn good at what he does. And if we go look at the stats for Aldo, okay, 91% takedown defense rate, guys. Let's look at when his stats started. 2008. 2008. WEC 34. Are you kidding me? This guy has been aces for as long as, many of you have been alive. So if you just look back at this guy's run, it's been absolutely incredible. It's been historic. But at the bantamweight division, he's given up a handful more takedowns, right? He did give up 1 takedown to Rob Font. He did give up 1 takedown to Petr Yan, 1 takedown to Marlon Moraes. So his once immortal takedown defense has suffered just a touch in this bantamweight division. That is one thing I want to note because he is taking on an opponent here in Mario Bautista, who is very assertive with the wrestling. 2.25 takedowns average per 15 minutes at a 44% accuracy. His takedown defense Not great, Chief. Just 66%, right? So not nearly the takedown defense rate of a Jose Aldo. Now, Jose Aldo will normally not look to take the fight to the ground, but make no mistake, if Aldo needs a takedown to win the fight, he'll get a takedown to win the fight. Go ask Chito Vera, right? Chito Vera, recent challenger for the title. When he was getting, on his run, when he was trying to find something earlier on, what ended up getting in his way? Jose Aldo wins the first round against Chito. Chito comes back out. He starts to find some success. He starts to land some hard shots. And what does Aldo do? He makes a veteran decision. He recognizes, hey, this fight's starting to slip away from me. And he takes his back and holds his back for the duration of 4 minutes and said, thanks for playing anyways, Chito. Easy win for the GOAT, Jose Aldo Jr. So when you look at this guy, he's sensational, right? And Mario Bautista in his last fight gave up 2 takedowns to Ricky Simon, but landed 112 significant strikes. Against Damon Blackshear, he actually got outlanded 90-79 on significant strikes, and he gave up 4 takedowns in the process. Against Guido Canetti, he was able to finish him almost instantly, so you throw that out of the sample size. Benito Lopez was far past his prime. I don't give that win much credence. Brian Kelleher has been on tough times lately as well, so I don't give that much credence. The Jay Perrin win. Jay Perrin's not really UFC level, in my humble opinion. 4 takedowns to 2 for Mario Bautista and outlanded him by 30 significant strikes. Trevin 5-Star Jones knocked him dead out. And Trevin 5-Star Jones, guys, really struggled in the UFC. He recorded 2 knockdowns against Mario Bautista and against Timur Valiev. And then he never recorded another knockdown in 4 more UFC fights, and he washed out of the UFC. So I like Trevin 5-Star Jones, but that loss did not age great. Then you look at the Miles Johns win. That was a good win for him. No doubt about it. Give him the credit where it's due. But then you go back and look at the Corey Sandhagen fight, and he got beat up and armbarred by Corey Sandhagen. That was a tough one. So you can see that this guy, Mario Bautista, is good. He's talented, but he could get hurt. And he's fought a pretty soft quality of competition, if I'm being frank. I think that the good guys he's fought, Ricky Simon, but Ricky is on the tail end of his career, if I'm calling it like I see it. Damon Blackshear, I think, is a good opponent, but you can make an argument based on those stats that Damon won the fight. I think based on the sequencing, it was very close, and Bautista could have edged out 2 and 3, but it was very close. And then you look at these other fights. I mean, the names Guido Canetti, Benito Lopez, Brian Kelleher, and Jay Perrin don't do nothing for me, right? So I think that you look at Mario Bautista, he's a talented guy, he's a skilled guy. His stats tell you he's a tough out for anybody. And he is going to be the bigger man in terms of the height in this matchup. He's the younger man as well. But you've got a Jose Aldo who's standing at 5'7", so 2 inches shorter, with a 1-inch reach advantage of 70 inches. And he has, over the course of his career, a slightly negative strikes landed per absorbed differential compared to Bautista. But what he does have is a very good knockdown ratio. So if you look at Jose Aldo, 2 knockdowns against Rob Font. He got knocked down against Petr Yan. He knocked down Jeremy Stevens. He got knocked down by McGregor and Max Holloway. He knocked down Chad Mendes. He knocked down Chad Mendes again. He knocked down Mark Hominick. He knocked down Uriah Faber twice. He knocked down Cub Swanson. He knocked down Rolando Perez. He knocked down Jonathan Brookins. This guy has been knocking people down, knocking people out, hurting people his whole career. He was not credited for a knockdown against Jonathan Martinez, but he absolutely, could have devastated him in that fight. I thought he dropped him from memory, so he certainly hurt him badly. Just Win Baby in the chat says they should have bet Aldo as a dog last fight. The train is gone. Interesting. We'll have to see. Why you leave the dome? I never go where I'm not wanted, brother. There's plenty of people in there that I like, that I respect, that like me, that respect me. If you ever want to hit me up, hit me up. But I never stay somewhere I'm not wanted, brother. That's all. When you look at the fight here, a lot of people are expecting Aldo to win. A lot of people are not giving Bautista credit. I do think Bautista is a skilled fighter. He is the younger guy. We want to give him, that credence as well. But I also think Jose Aldo is a very tough guy to beat. And I do think that the cardio concerns for me would be there if this was a 5-round fight. But over 3 rounds, I think Jose Aldo still has the gas to go. And I think that when you're looking at the fight being at elevation, maybe that's the advantage for Bautista. He's young. He's got an ability to push. But I do actually think that he can get hurt to the body. And I think Aldo's one of the best at targeting the body. So For me, that's what I'm looking out for, is some Aldo potential body shots here. I think he could finish this fight. A lot of people are expecting him to win it by decision. I think if it goes the distance, it gets a little hairier, because we've seen Aldo drop a couple decisions, right? Against Marlon Moraes, a close one. It could have went either way. And I think that that's where it gets dicey, because in those situations, Mario Bautista will throw a lot of volume out there, and a lot of volume is something that can be judged. Also, we've seen Merab didn't take down Aldo, but how did he beat him? He just pushed him into the fence, right? He was very assertive about holding him against the fence. And if Mario Bautista is smart and well coached here, he might try and press Aldo against the fence, hold him there, and say, see if you could do something about this. Try and make him tired by making him, wrestle off the fence. But if it's just a pure striking fight, I think that, Aldo is going to very much compete here. Good fight, fun fight, good matchmaking, a little bit weird, but I like it. Should be a fun scrap. But we're not in Brazil, right? If we were in Brazil, Jose Aldo is a favorite here. But now we're looking at, at elevation in Salt Lake City. Mario Bautista is going to give him something to think about here. Another fight that we're going to move quickly on, guys, is the Kayla Harrison and Ketlen Vieira fight. Not to shortchange Ketlen Vieira, who's got a judo black belt in her own right, who's got a jiu-jitsu pedigree in her own right, who has, some decent stand-up, a decent 1-2. I think she is upright with her chin. I don't think her defense is there. I think that the aggression that you need out of a fighter isn't always there. I think the willingness to push through some adversity isn't always there. And for Kayla Harrison, she's a dangerous woman. She's very physically strong. She looks like she's prepared insanely hard for all of her fights. And she comes from a higher pedigree in terms of both judo, jiu-jitsu, grappling. She just seems to have more boxes checked in terms of her strength, her physicality, her lethality, her ground and pound. And I think that Ketlen Vieira is a good fighter, a sound fighter, but when she's met a lot of resistance, physical and otherwise, in this bantamweight division, she has had a very hard time, right? And I think when she's fighting women that are older, that are a little past their prime, she has a lot more success. But I think of Kayla Harrison, and I say to myself, okay, she's within a year in terms of age. She's the slightly smaller woman in terms of reach, but they're virtually at size parity. And Kayla Harrison is a freak in terms of strength. I rate her double legs and single legs as higher level than Ketlen Vieira. If they get into throw exchanges, I think Kayla Harrison will probably win them. So for me, it seems like a fight where Ketlen has some ability to maybe surprise her with physicality in the clinch or something, but it just seems like a fight where, Ketlen will probably not like the feeling of getting bullied around by Kayla Harrison, and she might wilt a little bit under that pressure. So fun fight, interesting scrap. I'll do my research and my due diligence and see if I change my mind in any way. I wasn't super high on Kayla coming into the UFC, and I don't know if I'm overcorrecting the steering wheel, based on the Holly Holm fight. But you just look at the difference in how they both dealt with Holly Holm. Ketlen Vieira, I thought, won the fight, but it was extremely close. She had submission attempts. She wasn't able to finish it. Kayla Harrison, just went bully beat down, took her down, abused her on the ground, did whatever she needed to win the fight, and exerted her physicality. And I think there's bigger plans for Kayla Harrison in future fights, whether that's for the title, whether that's against Amanda Nunes, whatever they could try and muster from a big fight perspective. I don't think Ketlen Vieira fits the bill for that. I don't think she's very marketable in that way, but I respect her game. I think she's going to go out there and try her best, but we've seen her get flatlined in the first round. We've seen her go out there and, get outworked in meaningful decisions, and get beat up in round 3 as well. So at elevation, I'll take the woman who's an Olympian, who's extremely prepared, who's probably on all the sauce in the world, and who's very, very talented in all positions, really. So I think Kayla Harrison, her striking is a little bit exploitable, as we saw in the Pacheco fight, but I don't expect it to be a very striking-based fight here. I think she can drag Ketlen Vieira into the Harrison verse. Next up, guys, we got a really interesting one. It's opening up the main card. We've got Big Mouth Kevin Holland taking on Roman Dolidze. And Kevin Holland is going to check your anthropomorphic boxes here, guys. He's the taller man, 6'3" compared to 6'2". He's the longer man, 81-inch reach compared to 76-inch reach. He's the younger man, 31 years of age compared to 36 years of age. But I think we have a live underdog in Roman Dolidze, and I'll tell you guys why. I think that when you look at Roman Dolidze, he does one thing that has given Kevin Holland, problems at middleweight for as long as I can remember, which is he knows the wrestle, right? And if you know the wrestle, you can give Kevin Holland problems at 185 pounds. I bet Derek Brunson, when he was a similar, age type of differential, he was a much older fighter. And, Kevin before the fight was doing the arm around the shoulder. I think it was a 5-round fight. And I put small sprinkles on Holland by knockout, just to cover my bases. But I was over a unit and a half invested on Derek Brunson as the side in that fight at plus 150. And the whole predicate for that bet was that Derek Brunson is a Division II All-American. He knows how to wrestle at a really high level. And Kevin Holland is not physical enough to stop people from wrestling him, right? And if you look, he's not a bad jiu-jitsu player, but a guy like Brendan Allen was able to outposition him, out-physical him, lift him, throw him, take his back and choke him, right? And you look through, that's not the only example. There's a lot of examples. And I'm a big Kevin Holland fan, right? I talked about before, I bet Kevin Holland many times, and he has typically been a blessing for me. But there's times to bet on Kevin, and there's times to fade Kevin. And Kevin being a favorite in this kind of situation is different to me than some of the other situations he's been in. And if my betmma.tips will load, I will show you some of those examples. So let's go ahead and just look at the recent odds history for our guy, Kevin Holland. And you could call him the Trailblazer. You could call him Big Mouth. You could call him Kevin, whatever you want to call him, the Crime Stopper from Texas. He goes by many different names. But in his last fight, guys, he's a minus 275 against Michal Oleksiejczuk. What happened in that fight? He was nearly knocked unconscious. I was there in person, guys. I took it in. It was in Newark, New Jersey. And he almost got knocked unconscious. He got hurt badly in that fight. He got dropped. And then I cashed my bet on Kevin Holland by submission. And I was very happy to do that. But I said to myself, man, that chin is starting to go a little bit. Can you guys see that? Here, I'll zoom in at the bottom here. Kevin Holland by sub plus 330 against Michal Oleksiejczuk. We were there, right? We kind of knew what was happening. We look at the write-up. Why did we bet it? It was a BJJ black belt against a BJJ purple belt, okay? Oleksiejczuk was a horrible grappler on paper. I've been very good at betting on Holland fights, as I list out there, okay? So when I'm saying that I think that, Kevin Holland is a good fighter, he is a good fighter. And now we've got this on screen a little bit more clear, I hope. So if we look at Kevin Holland, he's dangerous. He's got good finishing instincts. He's got fast hands. He's got power in his hands. If this is a striking-based fight, he should win it, right? And he should win it pretty cleanly. Because when you look at Roman Dolidze is a guy who's a little bit slower, right? We saw the Imavov fight. He was getting picked apart a little bit by the hand speed, right? He was just a step behind. He's a little bit stuck in the mud. But when he's wrestling and grappling, that's not the case. Guys, if you've seen him move on the ground, Roman Dolidze is insanely fluid. Go watch his performances against Jack Hermanson. He ends up on the ground. He creates a calf slicer opportunity. He gets the guy face up, then gets him face down, and he ends up finishing the fight with ground and pound from the back. It was sensational work. Then you look at the fight with Phil Hawes, and I know what you're thinking. Man, Phil Hawes, he's a career letdown. Fair enough. But go watch the fight and watch the sequencing. This guy goes to the ground with Phil Hawes. He creates a leg lock entry. He destroys Phil Hawes' knee. Make no mistake about it. Visibly on television, he rips his knee apart. Then when Phil Hawes gets back up to his feet and can hardly stand, he tracks him down because the referee didn't call the fight, and he knocks him dead. It was crazy with knees, elbows. I think he ended up finishing it with big punches as well along the fence line. This dude has a ability to go out there and hurt people, right? So whether that's with, ground and pound strikes, whether that is with leg locks, leg entanglements, whether that is with, his knees on the feet. I mean, he broke Kyle Dawkins' face, right? He literally sent him out of the UFC with a broken face. So I think Roman Dolidze sometimes doesn't get the credit he deserves for being a very damaging, effective fighter. And on top of that, when he's not being damaging and effective, he's going to very close decisions with Marvin Vettori, a guy who's a little bit higher echelon, right? He's going out there and pressing that fight. It was a 3-round fight, and I thought that he could have won it, right? It was a super close one. He landed some big high kicks. Marvin put out a little bit more volume with the hands, perhaps, but it was a super close fight. Shout out to our guy Zach in the chat with the flex. What's up, brother? He says, Jake as well says, this ain't the year to be fading Georgians. I tend to agree. Georgian's been doing good lately. Dolidze should be minus 200 favorite. Surprised he's a plus 150 dog. I kind of agree. And listen, I say this as a Kevin supporter. I like Kevin. I'd like to see Kevin do well. But when you've got guys that can do the wrestle, I bet Derek Brunson to beat this guy by submission at plus 1450. I bet Kevin by sub against Alex Cowboy Oliveira, and he gave me a sweat there. He did end up going out there and finishing him via knockout. But you'll remember he got his back taken in the first round. He gave up some bad positions there for sure. Then you look at the Tim Means fight. We hit the plus 900 by sub for Kevin Holland there, the plus 330 by sub against Michal Oleksiejczuk. We've given Kevin a lot more credit than other people about his wrestling and his grappling. But the truth is this. We go through his record now on Tapology as opposed to on BetMMA.tips. And let's just take a look at this, guys, because I like Kevin Holland and I respect Kevin Holland. He's 13-8 in the UFC. That's a good record, but frankly, he should be doing better, right? Like, Kevin actually has the skills and the attributes to do better than that, but this is where we're at. He goes out there against Michal Oleksiejczuk, and then he gets dropped, and he's able to armbar him in controversial fashion. Michal Oleksiejczuk never tapped. Technically, his arm was getting jacked up, though. Then you look at the Michael Venom Page fight. Excuse me. We saw Ian Gary go out there and exploit the wrestling and the grappling of Michael Venom Page in order to get the win. And yet a guy from America in Kevin Holland, who's been training all this time, who's had 40 some odd fights, doesn't go out there and press the wrestling and the grappling against Michael Venom Page. And he got beat up, guys. It looked like he was on the verge of getting knocked out a couple times against MVP. His chin held up like a gangster, but Kevin was just getting hit with clean, flush, massive shots over and over again. He does not do a very good job defensively. So he got hurt badly by Oleksiejczuk. He got, basically landed about the head, neck, and chest by Michael Venom Page in a not great look. Then he goes out there against JDM, Jack Della Maddalena, and he had a fine fight. It was a close fight, and it showed off his talent again. But it didn't win him the fight, right? He didn't go out there and do enough. He didn't put a stamp on it. He didn't show anything crazy. And again, he was getting hit by Jack Della Maddalena. He did eat some big shots. He darsed Michael Chiesa because that is an inevitability. When you have a great darce choke and you're fighting Michael Chiesa, you're going to find it at some point. 3 guys have. Then you look at the Santiago Ponzinibbio fight. He's practically down on the cards. I'd have to go back and look. It was maybe 1-1. It was a close enough fight from my memory. And then all of a sudden he knocks him out in round 3. Nicely done, Kevin. But this is against a 40-year-old. This is against a guy who's up there in age. This is against the upper, guys that used to be relevant in the division, and Kevin's struggling. And this is at 170 and 185, right? So he's gone back and forth. Why did he leave 185? He left 185 because Khamzat Chimaev threw him every which way but loose. You look back at his other fights that he had. The Dawkins fight, he got a head clash and almost knocked out. Did get submitted in that fight, ended up getting it voided out because of the head clash. Fair enough. He lost to Marvin Vettori, the aforementioned. He got wrestled to death by both him and Derek Brunson. So then you ask yourself, all right, where do I go from here at 185? I'm getting out wrestled by the elder statesman, by the middle of the tier guys. So he went down to 170. And now he's just tweening back to 185. Meanwhile, guys, Roman Dolidze, let's go look at this. Roman Dolidze, his last fight was at 205 against Anthony Smith, and he beat him. So this guy's ranked at light heavyweight and at middleweight. And yet he's somehow an underdog to Kevin Holland. It's interesting to me, right? He's 7-3 in the promotion, pretty solid. He lost to Nasruddin Imavov, a top 5 middleweight right now. Marvin Vettori, a very controversial decision at the time. I believe that was at altitude as well. Let's just double check. No, that was in England. Excuse me. My apologies, guys. When I saw Leon and Usman, I got excited there. But in any case, this guy has gone out there and he lost to Trevin Giles back in 2021, Marvin Vettori, and Nasruddin Imavov. But he's beaten Anthony Smith, Jack Hermanson, Phil Hawes, Kyle Dawkins via knockout, Lariano Stapoli, John Alon, Kadisi Ibragimov. not a horrible run. You know, like the guy has actually had a decent enough run. He's shown off an ability to get takedowns. He's shown off an ability to hurt people, to break their face, right? He just doesn't seem like a guy that you could take lightly. And if we go over and switch to UFC stats, Kevin, like I mentioned, he's going to have the height and the reach here, no doubt about it. But if you just look, Dolidze is averaging 1.26 takedowns at a 40% accuracy. Kevin has a 54% takedown defense, 1.1 submission attempts to 0.6 attempted per 15 minutes in favor of Dolidze. Kevin Holland is landing at a better clip, but they're both eating around a similar amount of shots. So Kevin's just a little bit more accurate with his striking on the feet. I think if it's a striking fight, Kevin wins it. I think if it's a grappling fight, Dolidze wins it. And I think based on Dolidze's last couple fights, he hasn't been pushing the grappling as much, but I think this is the fight where he might bring it back. We did see, Dolidze at one point in his career had 5 takedowns against Laureano Sarapoli and 9 minutes, 37 seconds of control time. Could he really not do that against Kevin Holland? I mean, I think he probably could. It was awkward. It was like just control time rides against the fence, if I remember correctly, but still he was able to do it. Same thing against John Alon. He had 7 minutes of control time on the strength of 3 takedowns on 5 attempts. So I think that Dolidze has been moving away from his wrestling in recent years and performances, trying to get better at his striking, but now he's got a tailor-made matchup to go out there and get a little hype from Kevin Holland by taking him to the ground, beating him up with ground and pound, making him uncomfortable, and seeing if he could finish the fight. So for me, I think it's a live underdog here in Roman Dolidze, but I will do my tape and my due diligence and make sure that I still feel that way. Okay, now we're going to go rapid fire through the prelims, guys. We did a first look in depth for our UFC 307 main card, but because I've got some more obligations with Contender Series later, I'm going to go a little bit faster on the prelims and give our quick thoughts on these fights. So Stephen Wonderboy Thompson against Joaquin Buckley, 11-year age gap favoring Buckley. He's got the path to victory with the wrestling as well. I also think Wonderboy's chin is deteriorating over time. At 40 years of age, that's to be expected. I think Buckley is probably the side here. I think he's alive by knockout. I think he's alive by taking him down and winning on the mat as well. I'd love to see Buckley get his head kicked in one time or two. He's a little bit disrespectful to the legends like DC on Twitter, but he's a fun guy. He brings the energy, he brings the intensity, and you got a guy like Wonderboy as well. Nice guy. So I don't think they have a real loser here. I think both these guys, no matter what, will be, fun additions to future cards, but Stephen Wonderboy Thompson could be one fight away from retiring here if he's not able to get the jump on Buckley. Buckley has been a little bit of a tweener, but he's been on a nice run lately, and I want to give him credit for the improvements he's made. Beat Nursultan Ruziboev, beat Vicente Luque, finished him, beat Alex Morono, beat Andre Fialho, and he lost to Chris Curtis at 185. He lost to Nasruddin Imavov at 185. Since he's gone down to 170, things have been trending a lot better for him. And I think the physicality is there for him to go out there and wrestle a guy like Wonderboy at this stage of his career. So do I respect Wonderboy? Yes. Do I appreciate what he's done for the sport? Yes. Was I there when he fought Tyron Woodley to a draw in terms of watching from my couch and rooting him on? Yes. But I think the time has just passed him by a little bit. And I think ultimately Buckley is in a better place right now. So give me Buckley on the first look, and I'll do my due diligence and see if anything changes. Next up, guys, we got Marina Rodriguez taking on Iasmin Lucindo. And Marina Rodriguez is way up there in age. I think Lucindo is trending in the right direction. I think she looks to be the real deal Holyfield. She's got a ton of professional experience for somebody her age. And I think if she takes this fight to the mat, she will have the most success. If she just plays it out on the feet, I think it could be more competitive, but ultimately on the hand speed, on the youth, on the ability to make adjustments, give me Iasmin Lucindo to get the win here. But Marina Rodriguez is the A side in terms of social media. She's been around for a long time, so she could have a vet lesson up her sleeve. I just think Lucindo's the real deal. All right, guys. Next up, we've got Ihor Potieria taking on Cesar Almeida, and these are two guys I have cashed on as an underdog in the past, but I've also crashed on them, betting them, at times when it didn't work out. And for Cesar Almeida, I was surprised by how bad his wrestling and grappling looked against Roman Kopylov. If you bring a pure wrestling and grappling approach against Cesar Almeida, you could definitely take him down. You could definitely get a hold of him. And also, he got rocked in that fight. if my memory serves. I think Kopylov hit him with some big strikes and hurt him. You've got an A side here in Ihor Potieria, who is the bigger fighter, 6'3" compared to 6'1", 1-inch reach advantage as well. He's the much younger fighter, 8-year youth advantage for the underdog, the duelist, Ihor Potieria. I think that if Ihor Potieria goes out there to strike with this guy, he's going to get knocked out in the first round, potentially. I think he could go out there and strike with him a little bit, but I think Cesar Almeida hits harder. I think he's a little bit more precise with his counter combinations. However, if you go look at the Ihor Potieria record, guys, he's 7-1 career to the submission. And he hasn't really fought guys where he could exploit them easily in the UFC. Michel Pereira was able to submit him, and I said that the most value on Pereira in that fight was the submission line. You guys can go back and watch my video from that fight card. I broke that down earlier for UFC 301 this year. Gutted I didn't bet it. Then you look at Robert Burchek. I actually bet Potieria against Burchek, I believe, and Burchek was a minus some odd minus 180 some odd favorite, despite being a UFC debutant. He lost the fight. He did not look very good. Then the Bellato fight, Ihor Potieria almost knocked out Bellato. He looked very good there. Against Olberg, he looked terrible. Against Mauricio Shogun Rua, he finished him brutally and then did a dance on him, which is why the UFC hasn't match made him very favorably since. And he also lost to Nikolai Negomedianu in a competitive fight as well. So this guy is not very good, but he does have some ability to win with knockouts. He does have an ability to win decisions. He does have an ability to win with submissions. So I think he is a live underdog in this fight, plain and simple, because Cesar Almeida got taken down by Dylan Budka and then was able to recover. But Dylan Budka, we found out, stinks, right? He just did so badly in his most recent fight. No disrespect to the man, but he's really not at the level yet. He needs to make some significant improvements based on what we saw in his last fight. He looked underprepared before the fight, during the fight, after the fight. Then you look at the Roman Kopylov fight. Kopylov's a good fighter, but I mean, he got dominated there, right? He just got taken down, exploited, beat up on the feet, and it wasn't a great look. It was a split decision, but ultimately, guys, I felt like Kopylov was the clear deserved winner at the end of it, and I'm rooting for Cesar Almeida. So if I felt that way, I think it's a fair game. So ultimately, I think that the right guy is favored in Cesar Almeida, but I think that the line is a little bit crazy because Cesar, for as good as he is, he showed off his huge vulnerabilities in his last fight. He's making efforts to improve, but he's not, going to make these massive fight over fight improvements, I don't think, because he's already had a lifetime in combat in kickboxing. He's already been working hard with good fighters in the pro level. So I think he's going to make small marginal improvements fight over fight. And he's the way less experienced pro and the older guy here. So definitely some boxes checked for me on the Ihor side. Next up, guys, we got Alexander the Great Hernandez taking on Austin Thud Hubbard. And frankly, I just don't really believe in Austin Hubbard. I think Alex Hernandez is okay. I don't think he's a great fighter. I think there's a world in which Hubbard paces him late, but I have a feeling that Alexander Hernandez is going to crack him with big shots on the feet. I think Hubbard is kind of there to be hit. If you look back at Hubbard's career, he has a win over Michael Figlak last time out in the UFC, but he got dummied by Kurt Hollabaugh on the ground in that fight. Triangle choke in round 2. He got beat up by Vince from Hell Pichel. He barely eked one out over Roosevelt Roberts on the Ultimate Fighter. I'm not sure he deserved that win. Joe Selecki easily took his back and finished him. His wins were over Max Roshkov, who didn't last, and Dakota Bush, who did not last in the UFC. Lost to Mark O'Madsen, lost to Davi Ramos, beat Kyle Propolek. Again, these are really just not the highest level wins and losses to be taking. So he's 4-5 overall in the UFC, a very journeyman-like record. And meanwhile, Alexander Hernandez, 6-7 in the UFC, hardly much better, but he fought to a split decision with Damon Jackson, who I rate is a little bit better than Hubbard, lost to Bill Aggio, who I rate is better than Hubbard, and beat Jim Miller, who I rate is better than Hubbard. Lost to Billy Q and Hinata Moicano, both of whom I would probably rate slightly better than Hubbard, although Billy Q is a little bit washy at this point in his career. We wish him the best, though. Mike Breeden. Mike Breeden's not very good, and he got smoked by Alexander Hernandez, so fair play to him there. I bet on my guy Thiago Moises as a plus 199 to absolutely go out there and dummy him, and he did with the jab, so that was sick. The Chris Gruetzmacher fight, overall, just Hernandez has fought better guys. He has a win over Beneil Dariush, OAM, Francisco Trinaldo, and Jim Miller. I mean, that's just way better than anything Austin Hubbard's ever done, but neither one of these guys is super reliable. So I'm picking Hernandez. I think he gets it done, but I think both these guys are not very good, and I think they'll probably lose in their next couple UFC fights for sure. No disrespect to either guy. I wish them both the best, but they both have kind of journeyman records, and you see that in their performances. Very inconsistent. Carla Esparza will be retiring, taking on Tecia Pennington, and Tecia Pennington is in a championship camp for her wife, and Carla Esparza has got a foot out the door. I don't think she cares to be here. I think she's going to do the old wave to the crowd and get the hell out of here. Carla has had a couple times in her career where she's checked out in a fight when things were going sideways. Could she win this one? Yeah. Tecia Pennington is pretty average, but when you look, the Zhang Wei Li fight, I thought she found a way out of that one. The Danielle Kelly fight was going to turn into a disaster for her, in my opinion, when she had that cut open up. The Tatiana Suarez fight, another time when she got completely audited. She got beat up by Joanna Jędrzejczyk. So normally she's only losing against like championship level fighters. But if you go back far enough, split decision loss to Randa Marcos, did not age well. Split decision loss to Claudia Gadelha. Split decision win over Michelle Waterson Gomez. Split decision win over Marina Rodriguez. Split decision win over Rose Namajunas. I mean, the girl can barely win a fight. She can barely distance herself. I don't think she wants to be out there anymore. And she won a championship. She did her thing, but I think she's done. Period, point blank. I don't think Carla really cares anymore. So God bless her. Great fighter while she was, but she doesn't really care no more. And her upside recently has been a split decision win. So take that for whatever it's worth. I think the last time she looked good was when she beat up on Yan Xiaonan. And that one surprised me. So maybe she goes out there and dummies Tecia Pennington, but I don't see it personally. I think it's going to be a competitive decision where Pennington cares more and tries to win. Danny P says Hernandez is done, mental midget, and a gasser at elevation. Yo, fair play on that. That's a great note by you. Hernandez is a gasser, so I think that's an important note. Shout out to my guy, Jewish Better says, what's up, Liam? Shout out to Big Bird says, what is this man doing? We got Tuesday night fights to tape. As soon as I get off here from this rapid fire, Pierce is right back to taping Contender. You know that, my brother. And we'll be back checking in on this channel later today. So y'all know what to do. Check in, show some love to myself, to Pierce, to Gordo Gambles. Make sure that you hit the bell for that stream that we're doing later tonight. The link is already posted. You can find it on my YouTube page, youtube.com/LiamPicksFights. You can find all my information down in the description box below as well. And I hope that you guys will support that stream that we're doing later on, because it's going to be very high quality, and we're looking forward to talking about those fights with you. So last but not least, guys, I'm going to fire through these last two fights. Make sure we get you out of here within the 90-minute mark. And Ovince Preux, Ryan Spann. OSP is too big an underdog here in my view. I do think Spann is a deserved favorite. He's much younger in this fight, but OSP showed the fountain of youth in his last fight, came out with a ton of volume against Kennedy and Nzechukwu, and we know that Ryan Spann is a known gasser. He is a guy that has gassed out before. He is a guy that has gone to gross and close split decision type territory fights in the past. I think that he has the propensity to go out there and land hard shots in round one. He could knock out OSP. He could submit him as well. His guillotine is sensational, but he also could get Von Preux choked. I think that is a real possibility. And I also think that when you look at OSP, he throws a tremendous amount of volume, so he could squeak this on a decision. He could clip him with that left hook and hurt him, as OSP has been known to do, right? He put down, what's his name? Alonzo Menafield when he was another fighter out of Fortis MMA, I believe. So shout out to OSP. That left hook has been good money in the past, and he's got a history of cashing as an underdog as well. So shout out to OSP. I think it's a dogger pass situation, but I'll be interested to see what the prop market looks like on that fight. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. We'll talk about it on Bets and Banter. And then last but not least, guys, you've got the King of the Mormons, Court McGee, as an underdog and a substantial one against my guy, Dirty Bird, Tim Means. I think that this is another one where the dog is live, guys. Tim Means, I love him. I respect him. He's got 33 wins as a professional, but he is ancient. He's 40 years of age. He's a wrestling coach. The guy's been on very hard times lately. His cardio has never been a selling point. And you look at him, 15-13 in the UFC. It's a great record, but he got brutally knocked out by Uros Medic. He knocked out an Andre Fialho, whose chin is absolute dust. He got submitted by Alex Morono which I don't think Morono submitted anybody else in the UFC. I'd have to go check. Max Griffin, he lost a close split decision, could have went either way. He got Darce choked by Kevin Holland and made me a fortune, plus 900, Kevin Holland by submission. Then he beat Nicholas Dalby, which is a great win, make no mistake. But then the Mike Perry win. These are all back in 2021 and before. He's a much older man now. He's been finished several times in the UFC. And if you look throughout his career, guys, he has 10 losses inside the distance as a professional, and he's 40 years of age. So I can't get behind that at this huge chalk price. Yeah, he could probably beat up on a guy like Court McGee. Yeah, he could maybe knock him out. But if this fight goes 15 minutes, Court McGee is going to be wrestling him. He's going to be sniffing that crotch. He's going to be on his ass. And I think that against Morono, Court McGee fought like a bonehead. Against, what's his name? Carlos Condit, he fought like a bonehead. Against Matt Brown, he got viciously knocked out. His chin is going, no doubt about it. But he beat Ramiz Brahimaj. He beat Claudio Silva. He beat Alex Garcia. He beat Dominique Steele. He could still go out there and win UFC fights. The last win was in 2022. And now the Stormin' Mormon. I'm kidding. That's not his name. That's Matt Brown, an old wrestling nickname. But the Crusher, Court McGee from Orem, Utah, is going out there, born in Ogden, Utah, to take on in Salt Lake City, Utah, a man with poor cardio and who's 40 years of age. Just seems to me like a recipe for potential disaster. So God bless. Good luck. However you guys want to target these fights, make sure you do me 2 quick favors. All right, guys, here's my quick favors I ask of you. Number 1, drop a like on this video. It shows a little love and support. It helps the YouTube algorithm share this video with other people, and I really appreciate that support. It is something easy, free that you could do to help the show grow. Also, guys, make sure that you hit that subscribe button, hit that notification bell, because we're going live again later to talk Dana White Contender Series, and I hope to see you there. We got 2 great guests to do it with us. So without further ado, I'm out of here. I'm going to refuel, get the coffee brewing once again, get some food in my belly, and watch some more tape so we can talk Dana White Contender Series with you guys later tonight. God bless you all. Good luck, and talk to you all soon. Take care, everybody. Thanks.